Good afternoon, and welcome to The Conversation with Al McFarlane. I am W.D. Foster Graham, book review editor for Inside News, and I will be your host for this Book Chat Thursday. On The Conversation with Al McFarlane, we provide robust, stimulating, inspiring, and enlightening and informing chats. We cover everything from the African and African American diaspora. So, if you are tuning in to Conversation with Al McFarlane and you enjoy our content, do a like, do a share, and subscribe and share with your network. Now, we are currently at 1,400 subscribers and we're shooting for 2,000. And I say, and we appreciate your support. Today, I have the honor of having our guest author. Her name is Felicia Madlock. She is a writer, a licensed clinical social worker, and a literary activist. And she blends her passion for storytelling with a commitment to social change, drawing from her experience in community work and mental health. Her writing spans poetry, fiction, and children's literature, often reflecting themes of resilience, identity, and healing. I also had the honor of reviewing her latest children's book, Irresponsible Rain. So, that being said, it is my great pleasure to introduce to you, our viewers, Ms. Felicia Madlock.
Well, thank you. That is such an honor to be on your platform today, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, and we're definitely looking forward to you sharing your story. So, what I'd like to start out with is tell our viewers something about how you grew up.
Absolutely. Grew up on the south side of Chicago.
Yes.
I am one of three siblings. I have a younger sister that is 10 years younger than me. So I had a period of time where I was the only child. And I think that was really the seed as far as creativity. Because back then, we didn't have what the children have as far as just entertainment play. It was to go outside or you go with your friends or play rope and everything, or you engage yourself. And I think with my dolls and everything, that's where the story started. My little mind would just go on these adventures with my dolls as the main character. And that's where just my love for storytelling really started. But my inspiration, like you said, just growing up with Chicago. But I think another part of that was layered years later. Up to my teenage years, every summer, I would take these trips down south to my grandparents' house. And why I kind of was a little against it, then I really appreciate that rich experience there. Both of them are in Tennessee and in Mississippi. So just that whole experience. My grandfather had a farm with animals, did not get an indoor plumbing until the 80s. Some of these things that you as a child from the north, like, oh, I don't want to go there. But
Yeah.
really, looking back, just like I said, just a unique experience.
Hey, tell us more about those trips. We're dying to hear more.
Well, it really just, I always thought that the South at that time was a little backwards as opposed to comparing to the North in terms of things we enjoy. They didn't really play double dutch down there. The music was just like you said, was far slightly different. Definitely the weather at the time. So like you said, at the time, my sister was not yet born. So all my cousin was 4 and 5 years old. And at that time, to me, that was a lifetime. Now, of course, it makes no difference. But I'm 10 years old. They in there, far as teenage years and everything. So I was just like the little straggly one, tagging along. But again, just really with my grandparents, just understanding them at times. When I would visit my grandparents, we have a certain time they want everything in the house to be cut off. I had the opportunity to be able to engage with the livestock that they had. Really solidify the fact I do not want to have a farm, okay, and the foods and everything. But again, those experiences later on try to capture in essence, like you said, as far as stories that have been told and further stories that I want to tell.
Indeed, indeed. So, tell us more about uh, other persons who were definitely your mentors, who definitely had a role in who the woman that you are today? I appreciate.
Well, you know, it's a combination because I really hope it's not that one person as far as with that. I'll say it's been a combination of other relatives, definitely as far as teachers who really just encourage as far as support you. I think poetry was the foundation that really opened up the door to my other literary enjoyments that I have with that. Just early on, being from Chicago, we was definitely introduced as far as to Gwendolyn Brooks. Langston Hughes was one of those early poets as well that was a part of that landscape as far as in the classroom. And once introduction to it, I just never, like you said, I just never let go. It wasn't what that class instruction that I learned and I kind of put it to the side. I just really grew from it and was just hungry for more with it. And I was just fortunate enough to have those teachers and everything that really continued to feed that until I was able to feed that myself as far as with it, just looking for books and opportunities to hear their, like you said, as far as their poetry or different readings and everything there.
Oh, so that being said, now tell us when you first started writing.
Start writing that in that youth is with it. Again, poetry, not really knowing the mechanics of it, but just writing
Mhm.
poetry, more of that rhyming, like roses are red, violets are blue, that A-B skin, and just allowing it to be an outlet. It was more of that, and then at that time, you how they would encourage you to journal, but it was more along the poetry, and then not really understanding a lot of the poetry was connected to what was going on in my little, like as far as in my development at that time, about friendships, maybe wanting another sister, and sooner or later she came along as far as with that. With that, but again, our relationship did not really take place until she was grown, because by the time she was 7 8, I was off, went to school. So it was that time that I had that being only child, and she also had that opportunity as far as being only child. And my brother, he was adopted by my parents years later, and he feels like I have a daughter, but I feel like he's my son that's just been raised by some relatives in the South because he's the same age of my daughter. So with that, but it really just really started then, just really trying to reading. I think as far as with that loving, just my nose was always in a book as far as with it. So I think the reading and writing was really married together at that time. And just needing that outlet. It was an escape for me. Because like you said, at times being I was just bored. And if I asked my parents, let's go somewhere, they would look at me a little side-eyed and say, again, go out and play. Either get on your bike or you do something as far as with that. I'm not here to with that. So that has really the reading and like you said, and just the love for the poetry was really just married to each other at an early age.
Oh, I hear you on that because I know I became quite a reader because my dad read constantly. He had his nose in a book, and so I took after him. And thus, we've often learned that if we're going to be good writers, we need to be good readers.
Absolutely,
And
absolutely.
so on that note, share how you feel when it comes to literacy in our children, those who generations who are following us right now. Since I know we'll be talking about your children's book later on in the show, but I'd love to hear.
It's interesting. I had this conversation with my daughter. She's an adult now, as far as growing up. And at the time when I felt like it was a second renaissance, so it was a lot of Black authors. And at that time, that was really self-publishing. They was getting picked up by major warehouses. And I thought that not major warehouses, but printing houses from New York, that was an excellent time because it gave us this opportunity to be exposed to other writers. And her friend, she was in about the fifth grade at the time, and her friends was reading Zane. Now, if you're familiar with Zane, she was erotica at the time, and me and my girlfriend had a conversation about it and everything. I was like, I'm glad that they're reading. It's not appropriate. It's not appropriate material at this time. Of course, it can foster, as far as dialogue and everything, but they were reading. So when she came home with the book, I told, okay, we try to talk about as far as the themes and everything. I said, but let me expose you to some other books around that has maybe a character around your age, Black authors and everything. So really just trying to, being very intentional, which my parents supported, but not, like you said, just really feeding me those books at the time. So giving her just other books. And she was, like I said, just devouring them. She was like, bring them on as far as what, and it just expand beyond that as well with that. So really just being attention at the time. I know now, I know it can be some conversation back and forth because for some people, at least they're reading. But I think that we have to be very active in understanding what they're reading. And if we are going to be open to those type of themes at an earlier age, to have the conversation. We know with the internet that they're already exposed. I get that. But definitely having those ongoing conversation on what that means and everything, what is appropriate and what is not at this time. I don't know if they're reading more now with the internet because it's so easier now. Just with TikTok, it's just seems like everything is just instantaneously, and after a couple of minutes or so, they off to the next thing instead of really know what it feels like to put your nose in a book and to go somewhere and to get lost in those pages, and everything else is secondary until that story and everything as far as was done. I know it seems like there's more of a preference with videos, and I get that. I mean, I'm Generation X, and they don't understand that we are the beginning of all that. Video games, I mean, just the whole thing. So I am connected with that, but I still just like that, like you said, a hardcover book. I'm for audio because sometimes I've read some good books I could not get through reading, as far as hardcover, but I was able to listen to because they had a great narrator as far as with that. But whatever we can do, just encourage them as far as with that, because we have to tell our stories. We have to encourage them outside. I think the video, it's not about supplementing with the video. It's about just adding on to it, because all of it is opportunity for storytelling.
That's true. There are so many opportunities. All we have to do is kind of just recognize them and tap into them.
Absolutely.
Definitely. Now, how has your experience as a clinical social worker shape your voice as an author and the stories that you choose to tell?
Wow. I've been a social worker for over 25 years now, as far as with it. Just coming out of college, didn't really know exactly what I was getting into. I ended up working for our Illinois Department of Children and Family Services. Our goal at the time was to try to keep families together as opposed to putting the children into foster care. What I seen as a young social worker at that time was beyond my comprehension in terms of how drug abuse impacted family, how the system is negatively designed to keep families apart. It was two dynamics that what I was exposed to, of course, like you said, as far as the life experience, is definitely a lot of material as far as with it in terms to incorporate into story. But I also wanted to be a change in that. I went back to school and got my master's degree to understand those particular dynamics. Given a case in point, if I'm working with a family that have a substance abuse problem, substance abuse was one of the main dynamics I was working with in the early 90s. If this young lady, like I said, a single family of four, have had a substance abuse problem for over 4 years, but the court system is trying to get her less than 2 years to get her life together, get a job, find a place to live, and be in what they call stable enough to maintain her family. It's just, we're not setting them up for success. We're setting them up for failure. Somebody really just have maybe sporadic work experience, but just dealing with the substance abuse itself, we know as far as from clinical data that it's going to be a lapse of recovery in that a couple of times before they actually start to get some type of stability. And within 2 years, or they they risk the jeopardy of they having their parental rights terminated. It's just not a system that was just far as to set up for success. And with that, and all the far as other entities at the time, I stayed there for 6 years, and I wanted to do something more specialized as far as with that. But I found myself holistically in a circle. I worked in far as in the jail as a mental health specialist, and now I'm like more of a coordinator, work with the seniors. So I've really done far as full circle, but each experience has been very humbling. It has been, like I said, just far as just rich, just far as with stories, and just also letting us know there's so much other work that needs to be done in terms of just motivation and hope. And then on the other side of that, hopefully there could be some path to healing.
And at the end of the day, it is about the healing.
Absolutely.
Most definitely.
Absolutely.
Now, so what is, you shared about the poetry
Mhm.
that you done. Um, what are some of the other stories that you've written?
Outside of the poetry, like I said, I've definitely brought as far as children tales. I've had
Mhm.
4 children books, and I have written 2 novels. The
Hey.
first one is called Sins of the Father that came out roughly around 2000. Like
Mhm.
I said, it was definitely that explosion at the time with I mean, so many Black authors. And this follow up to that was called Back on the Block. And
Mm.
that's what I guess that was more labeled like urban lit at the time. It had urban themes in it. I know we can go back and forth with that category, but it did have some urban things. It was about a young lady back on the block, about a young lady that had 5 years sobriety. She was coming back to Chicago from Detroit to save her younger sister from the same ills that she got caught up in, as far as with it. So both set in Chicago as a character in both of my stories there
Yes.
with that. And just again, just far as rich stories, as far as different aspects of whether it's from personal or professional, and just embody them in the story. So you will see maybe a scene from the South Side. Definitely in the first novel, Sense of the Father, was based upon a man that had 4 sons. The three oldest son, he was somewhat abandoned, but the youngest one, he was there parenting, and it really started off at untimely death. So it really shows the son's perspective of their father. So they have the 3 oldest that kind of really did not have a positive relationship with their father, but the younger one did. And when they meet, how do they blend that? And the oldest start to find out that there was stuff that his father was trying to do to amend his ways, but he just did not have the opportunity to do that. So that story takes place, like I said, from when the projects was coming down at the time. So I talked about that all the way, like you said, going to the North Shore and everything. Being a social worker, I went into all the projects. I've never thought I would have did it. And that in itself was its own experience on how to just navigate as far as with this. So it's just been all of those experiences and trying to capture into books or short stories and everything.
Okay. So projects. Are you talking about the ones along the dam, Ryan, between
Yes.
35th and
Yes.
55th?
Right.
Wow.
Yes. Robert Taylor.
Yeah.
Yes. Stayway Gardens. Those are the one that line up for, like you said, from 55th down to about 30 something.
Yeah. I could. They look like I call it like the concrete canyon, so to speak.
Absolutely.
I could say that because I lived in Chicago for a few years, though I was born and raised here in Minneapolis.
Okay.
And stuff here. So all this kind of rings a bell. Now, in that book, do you operate like from like a first person point of view or a third person point of view when
It's
it came to the sons?
third person.
It's a third
Third person.
person.
Yes.
Okay. So now with the so from your poetry and fiction as you're writing and stuff, I think you touched on some of it. But what do you hope that readers take away from your work?
Just the themes that's in there. I think the first when I think the poetry, I can actually, when I look back on, I can see it's a progression of my life experiences, friendship, love, relationship. I would say the last 15 years has been more. The pieces have been centered around more social justice. So it's more things have experienced around me. That's what I try to far as reflect from far as the poetry and everything. So I could definitely see far as that growth. But even in the stories, definitely as far as the theme, as far as the message. And definitely in Sense of the Father, it was about, like you said, as far as that reconnecting and also a point of just forgiveness as far as his brotherhood, reconnecting and forgiveness there. Both of them are entitled to their perspective, but I think it really kind of helped them, the brothers, because they was young adults, to really have to negotiate that this man did some things that their mother did not really share with them, but was trying to connect with their shame,
Oh.
and all of that kind of preventing, like I said, because it's untimely death and their far as with that. And then meeting their younger brother and hear how he was grieving and just adore his father was the type of father they wish they had. That is that a person can can make a transition there.
So true.
Okay.
So in this book, does your book also deal with generational curses?
Indirectly it does,
Mm.
yes, as far as with that, because even though like with the main character was called Samuel Jameson, but his nickname was Street, so he had a charisma as far as with women, and his son picked that up and everything, and his
Oh,
mother would make these comments now and then, like you just like you as far as your father. So absolutely, like you said, as far as these dynamics, that when we can look back and everything and see some of those dynamics there.
yeah, got it, got it. Now, one thing I do is I'm for one say that we can never have enough Black children's books.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
And so, um, and so I'm thinking in your children's books, what are some of the things? Because I think when the kids are would be teachable moments when you're writing them.
And I think that really stems from my social worker background as well. Like you said, want to do something that's entertaining for the kids. So this Irresponsible Rain is the third, it's the third book from that series. And it was identified from my mother's name is Lorraine. So I tried it, like you said, as
Okay.
far as the Rain series, that is as far as honor to her. And then I'll just offer my daughters in engagement somewhat. Like you said, definitely everything else. Not, no little puppy kept follow her home or anything like that. And we kept, but just using those as examples. The first one was called Far as Selfish Rain. A little girl didn't want to give up her clothes. It talks about the value of sharing.
Mm-hmm.
The other one was Teasing Rain. Talk about, like you said, just being teased and taunted. And that's definitely a main element as far as our kids today. And then it's this one, like you said, just really touch on as far as um, being responsible. And I think with the kids, we need, like you said, to just really instill these values, but do it in a very entertaining way instead of preaching. You know, you feel
Mm-hmm.
like somebody with myself with gray hairs, I'm so far removed from what they feel like I understand with them, even though we was that age. And some of the core dynamics is still there with that. But again, just trying to provide it in a very educational way. That way they can receive it. And then hopefully with that can foster the conversations around it.
Yeah.
Why is that appropriate? Why did she do that? Or maybe I wouldn't have done that. So just really try to see themselves in the story.
Yeah, that is so true. And because when children's books are also children are visual,
Mhm.
they're very visual and stuff. Would you be? Are you an independent author?
Yes, I am. Yes, I
I
am.
am. So am I.
And
Because
I like to add, growing up, I didn't see no books with characters like myself. I remember reading the lady that wrote "Thank God It's Me," Margaret. Her name is skipping me right now. I know, but she's a white author, but she's a good author. Don't get me wrong. And I read the Beverly Hills Twins. This is one of the things that happens. It's like when you get older, it's right there, and I'm gonna think of it once this interview is over. As far as with that, but I enjoy reading. So with that, but of it could have just been more books, and they was probably out there, but not really being intentional to really bring those back. But when I was able to do that for self, that's what I did, and just really being intentional for my daughter, as far as with that. So turn her on to Octavia Butler and everything. She has just took the baton and just was like, "Hey, have you read so and so?" No,
hey,
her okay.
hey, definitely.
Yeah.
So since we're on the topic, we'd love to have you share your responsible reign.
Yes.
Yes, please share.
Okay. Ooh. Okay. You want me to? I can hold it up. You want okay with that?
Whatever you're comfortable
Good.
with.
Okay. Okay. Excellent. So this is the title. This is the cover. Irresponsible Rain of the little girl there, and this is loosely based on my own dog, and his name is Gino, and how they found each other one day and
Yes.
everything. Dogs, I'm at that stage. The dogs are just like, oh, and I know most little kids love dogs. So this dog follows her home. She don't know from where he came from. And he was just so adorable. And she was just so enthralled with him. So she was like, come in. She invited him into his room. But as we also know with dogs, as cute as they can be, they can also not smell so well.
Hmm.
So she was like, I need to give you a bath. And so she was, again, being trying to be responsible in that. But when she went away for that moment, he just went to town because he was like, oh, this is a new environment for me. I got toys that squeak and all of that good stuff. And so he just had fun, as dogs do. And when she came back, she was just like, oh no, what am I going to do? So she had to face the fact she couldn't hide it anymore. She had to go share with her parents, like, look.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I guess that's one thing about when kids and stuff, especially with pets. A lot of kids want all the privileges, but none of the responsibilities.
Responsibility, absolutely. Absolutely. The maintaining of a dog, and a dog is much more in the. I grew up with cats, but dogs so far is much more intensive. Cats use a little more leeway, but still, both of them need, like you said, that ongoing, consistent maintenance.
Yes, because I said their wants are immediate.
Yes.
Same with children; their wants are immediate.
Yes.
Uh, as you were sharing, I was also thinking of there's this quote. It's one of my one of my favorite ones. Two of them actually.
Okay.
The first one is by the Queen, Aretha, and she says, "Be your own artist and always be confident in what you're doing." And the second one is by Toni Morrison, and it goes like, "If there is a story you wish to read and it hasn't been written yet, then you must be the one to write it." So, what do those quotes mean to you?
Okay, let's start with Aretha. Like you said, be your own artist and be confident. I cannot say I'm confident all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, as far as really struggle with that at times. But I think as we really be honest with ourselves, even just checking in with other writers at times, because writing is so intimate. So when you let that go and everything and share it with others, you want them to receive it in the manner that you have wrote it. Poetry is a good example of that. Poetry is so subjective.
Yes.
I can go someplace, be like, oh, yes, that's so, and sometimes they say it's so abstract. I don't even know what you're talking about. I've got that from my friends. It's like the word sounds nice, but well, what are you saying and everything? So it could be so subjective. Because when I finish a piece, whether it's complete, I'm so on this poetic high that I send it out to a few friends. But again, I got to be mindful that that's really not their cup of tea. That they are being very civil and reading it for me, but like, and then they'll come back and say that was nice. That is the worst word for me in poetry. What does nice? Nice doesn't describe anything. So if you said you would have hated, at least I've garnered some type of strong reaction from you. Nice doesn't do anything as far as with it. So try to find confidence. I'm working on that as Rita, as far as with that. Working on that in terms of, like you said, just far as with the right. But I think that's why if I need to strengthen that, that's taking me back in my communities that I need to, in terms of my writing community, to really continue to strengthen that. I think that's a lifelong. That's a lifelong process for me. Like I said, it's not for the money. I've done this long before, like with that. Of course, to get paid for it, that's a great thing.
Yes.
And it's Toni Morrison. I agree with on that. Like you said, if it hasn't been written, but also somewhere I wrote that, writers are thieves. It's not really a story that has not been written, but it was what our little special sauce that we're going to put on it. How we're going to put that twist on it's going to make it individual as far as with that. Because again, wanted to write about 3 girlfriends. Terry has done it. And she's not the only one with that, but how do we put our own individual dynamics on it? But the things might be the same: girlfriends, health relations, just relationship, family dynamics, and those particular things. But how do we put our own personal spin on it that's going to make it ours and our own? But I love both as far as both of them there. But I think I could have challenged Aretha on some things based on some of her bio. So we ain't been confident 24/7 as far as with that. As artists, but when she step out on that stage, maybe I think that alter ego of hers take over. I think it's something similar to what Beyonce do.
That's true, because I still remember seeing the video of Aretha at the Kennedy Center honors when she honored Carole King, and she basically bought the house down. It's like a whole church went up when she sang. Because
I can believe that. She was a phenomenal singer.
Yeah. Because what they said, that was 2015. She was 73 years old, and she brought it.
Okay.
That's to give it to the queen.
Okay. Oh, absolutely. None like her, nothing, none would be after her as well, as far as with it. But they just that confidence. So it's refreshing to hear the like actors and writers. So with it, how they say they feel a little nervous as far as with
Mhm.
it, before they go on stage. But when they get on there, they execute.
Mhm.
I think that's like as far as some of that. I think some of the anxiety is it's good anxiety. It's not like as far as paralyzed. Because I used to hate to speak in front of a crowd.
Mhm.
But poetry is something very personal. Other people can read it, but I think it's something just unique when the author is reading their own words. So I had to get more comfortable with the performance of it. And I went to like things like Toastmasters, just little far as different, I like to call them learning labs, to where I can be more comfortable in public speaking. Now, am I 100% there now? No, but I know if I have to do something where it's a public forum, that I'm gonna be able to do it. I can be able to just get myself in the right mind space to be able to execute that particular event.
Indeed, because hey, nobody can read the work like the poet or the author and stuff. Uh, are there a lot of like places that like have open mic nights around Chi-Town?
Chicago, there are as far as with it, but it was a time in the early 90s, I would say for a period, and loosely maybe 90 to 2000, Chicago point, it was every day, it was just hot. And it
Mm,
was just something magical about that. It was before Love Jones dropped, but around that time, because I know the famous poem that Lorenz Tate wrote, I know as far as the writer from Chicago with it. So poetry was hot. And people was coming, you had different types of poetry. There was this Chicago had this rhythm. I think Love Jones is the best example to show. Is this particular rhythm with the poetry, with that, and if it kind of fall out of that rhythm, what does that look like? So it was a phenomenal time. I had opportunity to meet legendaries like Sam Greenlee at the time, and just looking at the generationals of poets that was coming from like that 60 era and the new individuals there, and just have respect for all of them. But it sometimes could be it start to get too commercialized. So what
oh,
is the definition of poetry, and what is poetry? And it's just we just have to keep. It's really what is going to appear to your ear. I don't get into those conversations there, because I'm like, I might not like it, but who am I to say that it's not poetry? It doesn't have a right, like you said, for us to be there. But it was a wonderful time there.
oh, I can only imagine.
Okay.
I can only imagine.
Every day you can. It used to be every day you could find, if you want to go to a poetry set, you can find. So whether it's on the north side or on the west side or whatever, but it's still very much active here. I'm just not connected to it as much as I was back then.
I can remember. I'm a baby boomer, so I can remember. And I went to this 4-year liberal arts college in Iowa. So this was like the early. This is like the early 1970s, and so they brought different people to black authors and poets to us. And one of the poets that came to speak to us was Gwendolyn Brooks.
Ooh.
And I mean, we the black students were like, wow. We
How
was like,
awesome
wow.
was that? Oh yeah.
I mean, the kids today would say that was fire. And to have someone like her coming to talk to us,
Wow.
that was just amazing. Because when you look back and see all the different authors we have crossed our paths, and we and so, but then again, when we're talking about children's books, yeah, I'm a product of
Absolutely.
Minneapolis, and the public libraries had, and I just said had this. What you had was Further Adventures of Dick and Jane.
Absolutely. A story about Gwendolyn. Those when she passed, I want to say late 90s. I have to pay kudos to Chicago State.
Mm,
Chicago State in Chicago was the one that had, like you said, connect those authors like not only Gwendolyn Brooks, Nikki Giovanni's, and Sonia
mm,
Sanchez. They will have the Black Literary Festival yearly, and
mm,
that was the thing that I would visit regularly. But I was at the DeSable Museum the night Nikki Giovanni was there, Sonia
mm.
Sanchez, and I don't know who was the other person, but that's the night she transitioned while
Oh,
they was doing that poetry. And just that moment just felt so poetic. But like you said, being intentional. When they would come to Chicago and the different places, that my daughter, she at first she was a little resistant. Like I said, you come to see these people. You need to know, because I like I said, it's not Gwendolyn Brooks. You know, kids now don't like, who is that? I'm like, really? This is somebody from Chicago. Y'all should know her name. Okay. You should know what she stands for and everything. That's the kind of virus, just trying to do the educational tip. Some of them are exposed depending upon where they got it from. But I'm like, who is Gwendolyn Brooks? I'm like, okay. All right. But just being intentional as far as with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's just a lot of it's up to us to be passing those
Absolutely.
on.
We have to.
It's definitely part of that. Now, and all of us, be us writers or poets, well, we have we each have our own unique process when we write, and when we're conceptualizing our work and stuff. So I know I have a particular kind of writing process, but let's say I'd love to hear yours.
My writing process is all over the place now.
Hmm.
But what I try to do is use the technology that's given to us now, like with the phones. If the idea comes to me, I either text myself the information, or I use the micro, as far as the audio recorder there, to just try to get the ideas down. And like I said, I have scattered notes. I'm one that's always been paper and pen everywhere and anywhere, and just trying for us to get those notes down. I need to shift. When I was younger, my process was at 10 o'clock to 2. That was the time my daughter was asleep. It was quiet, and I'm able to just get those, like I said, just get those notes down and be more consistent. Now working, like you said, a full-time and having even a part-time practice doing mental health and being older, that's just not going to run. That's not going to fly right now. So I have to shift more towards the morning. Or sometimes I have different breaks in the afternoon, but just being mindful consistently every day as far as with that. And just trying to, like you said, just try to get that, because it's starting to be a priority again. I put writing on the back burner for a minute, and just really just like, no, you can't do that. It's almost like you disconnecting yourself from a love. It's like, really, this is how you're going to do me? Okay.
Yep.
I am here for you. Okay. It's like we need each other. It's just in everything. So definitely making more a priority, but definitely going to have to shift now more towards, I have more free time and flexibilities in the mornings before the rest of the day start to get hectic with all the different elements with that. So with my poetry, when it comes, I try to get it out, because it's something about that initial inspiration. So if it's just a thought or one of those, like with George Floyd at that time, it was just a couple of statements that I got out, and I went back to it, because like you said, because of what was going on, and being able to, far as to finish that. In Illinois, was, like I said, a lot of it's on social issues, Sandra Bland. So when those poetry dynamics come out, I get into the essence of it, because I'm excited about it, and I will complete that. Short stories, I'm a little bit better as far as trying to complete those too, because they're short. My flow with writing novels is what the struggle, like you said, just being consistent and moving it forward. I go back and edit myself, and I know that I should not be doing that. It's about getting that whole story out, and then you have multiple chances to go back, rewrite, and edit, but getting the essence of the story out. I have multiple of ideas of what I want to write, so I'm not been one of those that's been for a lack of ideas.
Yes.
It's about staying with one idea and not starting on this one, and then this other idea come up, and seeing this one to the finish line, then moving to the next one. So just trying to get far as discipline in that area with that. The third book I am, actually it's 2 books I'm loosely working on. The third one is going to be a follow-up from Street Sons. So taking those sons and aging them. So it's going to be 20 years later. So the youngest one was 14, the main character. So he will be in his 30s, and his older brothers are in their 50s now. So really just talk about the dynamic where their relationship is at that time, their marriages, and just the life issues that they're dealing with. Set it in a fictional town. I don't know if you know where I live at. I'm very close to Dalton, Illinois.
Mm-hmm.
So if you've never heard of Dalton, they had a very interesting mayor for a term that was just nominated the worst mayor ever. It was almost comical. It was almost comical, like a politician can do that. But again, life events, right? And then that not to be enriched for a story. So having a little, some of the dynamics that has transpired there as far as into the story. And the other one is just about far as four female friends, what they dealing with it. Because I being in my 50s, just what the life dynamics that they dealing with at this time. Some of them are in the sandwich generation. I'm sorry, caring for elderly parents, and maybe not the children, but the grandchildren there.
Right.
Relationship. How you divorce after 30 some years, but finding out that now, like you said, want to divorce and start over in terms of your romantic interests there, and just life choices with that. So those are the two stories that's going to come to the finish line next several months.
Right, there you go. Like I said, I know I have a series about one very large, wealthy, and powerful African American family. And so I know when I'm writing, I can draw about any member of that family at any point in time. So, and just an FYI, the first three novels take place in Chicago. So
Hey,
yes.
okay.
So we talk about South Side and Evanston and all those areas, and some on the North Shore, and say in the community. Going from, I would say, from the 1940s to the 1980s.
Wow.
And then more other subsequent ones take place here in the Twin Cities because it's for another branch of the family. So, but hey, we all have a very different, way we approach our writing style. Now, so since we met at the Black Child Book Fair, tell me how you first connected with it.
I've known Daryl. I believe we because he's a poet as well. So I
Yeah.
know we had connected back in the days. I've known Daryl for over, I want to say as far as 20 years. So we have connected back on the poetry scene. And he's also in social service. So it's just one of those small communities. When he was even just shared that he was doing the Black Child event, and I had as far as a children book, I'm like, I'm all on board. And I know he has been going out across the nation. I tell him I would just try to, Minnesota was one of those places I've been before. I almost relocated there, but I did not. I think the weather, came there one time in the winter, and I was just like, ooh, Chicago cold. It's a different layer of cold. I was like, okay, beautiful city. I would definitely be back, just like you said, just to visit, but just really try to connect when I can. So I can definitely do more of his Midwest. At that particular weekend there, my daughter went to go see her other side of her family. So it was just one of those things that was really it was a perfect dynamic there, able to drive up and everything. So we've known each other. And of course, I always participate in Chicago, the different events there. So he's really taking it to a whole different level. I wish nothing but blessings for him. And I'll try to get on that train where I can try to fit in when my schedule and everything connect there as far as with it. So he's going to some fantastic cities. I'm going to see if I can do Orlando in January. And I'm going to be honest with you, I'm trying to get to Disneyland for my big kid, but I'm going to see if I can make that happen.
All right, I say to your success in doing so. Speaking of that winters, I lived in Chicago long enough to deal with the hawk. I know about that hawk. and lake effect snow and all that stuff too. So yeah, I mean Chicago is something else when it comes to weather as well.
But I still think Minnesota is still slightly. It's maybe it was just that week. I was just like, oh no, I would have to live downtown where y'all buildings are connected. So I'm gonna have to go outside. I'm like, oh, this is Chicago's cold, but it's cold. Here it was just something like it was piercing through my bones. I'm just like, whoa.
Oh, yeah, well, I can testify to that as a child growing up, especially as a child in the 1950s and 1960s, and being out there when the temperature was 30 degrees below zero, and that was without the wind chill, and and you couldn't see cars because the snow was so high. Been there, done that. So yeah, I can relate.
Mhm.
I
Absolutely.
can definitely relate. So yeah, yeah,
Awesome.
you got a point there. So, question for you now: how do you practice self care while working in both emotionally and demanding fields, which is social work and writing?
Yes, self-care. That's what I always encourage my client. My self-care is just really just disconnecting, taking some time out for myself. So making sure, as far as with it, indulging in a book. That is, I have so many books, and my goal is one day to have me just a library. I want floor to ceiling, and I know I can pack them with my books as far as with it. So just having that space, but it's something short term. Is just far as going somewhere with a book. I love going to the movies because it's something visually about as far as with that, with the storytelling, like you said, just displaying there, just so really just keeping my interest there. So definitely far as reading, going as far as movies, and then just far as going for walks. That is just being in touch. I call it run walk, but most of the time I'm walking. It's just really that touch of nature. That's when ideas come to me. That's when I kind of flush out. And it's something that I'm really wrestling with at the time. Sometimes it's to calm nerves and everything. So that has just tried to be instrumental. I love new areas. I try to do that, of course, in a very safe dynamic. That's just kind of just walk and do that anywhere with that. But just using those are the three tools that have just really been far as consistent. And then when I have opportunity to travel, I think that feeds you in a whole nother way, like you said, just to go out to see far as different places. My upcoming, I would like to go. Far as Arizona, I never just really touched down there. I would definitely like to go there. And any other, like you said, far as new places, definitely some places international, but it's a lot of hidden spots right here within the states that I would just like to explore and everything.
Hey, there you go.
Like
There
the last
you.
time in Minnesota, I went to Paisley Park, and that was very that was on my first little list there. So that was very emotional.
Hmm. Yeah, Prince. I know one of our homegrown celebrities.
Yes. And I guess it was really sad because his sister died too not long ago. And I guess I asked
Mhm.
one of the tour director at the time, like, all of this now is managed by a private firm that it's not even within his family anymore. At least that's what they say. I don't know how much truth that is as far as with that, but I know upon his passing, it was divided with his half siblings, and I know his sister just died maybe a year or two ago. So it was just like,
Mhm.
wow,
Yeah.
such a genius. Mhm.
Yes, yes, he
Mhm.
was. He definitely was. Now, now I have a question that I ask all my authors
Okay.
as they're here. And my question is this: what advice would you give to your 13-year-old self from where you are now?
The advice I would have gave to my 13-year-old self would be to do it. Don't let the fear at that time of not feel like your writing is not strong enough to have more faith in your voice as far as with that, and go down that creative path with which I did as far as with it. Just have faith in yourself with that. In terms of your creativity, there is a place for it, there is a need for it. And I would always listen to others like, well, what you gonna do with that? Or what is writing? How is writing gonna sustain you? It could have, okay, and it has. As far as in its own way, it definitely has. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much for sharing. Now, as I'm thinking, as we were talking about, like the life issues and stuff like that, so far as children, especially when you're a social worker and clinical and stuff, how can we engage the parents to in terms of encouraging our children to into reading? Because I figured that's usually a key factor with children is engaging the parents.
I would encourage the parents now because more schools are being a little more open, being intentional about bringing black writers and everything now. That they have more resources than ever to find those books that That your children, I mean, give them some options here. They got plenty of options on what they would like to read. Read the book with them. I know it's a children, but a lot of these children and young adult books are just as fascinating as far as novels and everything there. Give them something they can see themselves in. And then if they have an interest or something as far as of writing, it's some tools now where they can write their book. They don't have to wait until they get picked up from New York or anything. You know, we have children that are writing as far as their own stories, as far as with that. Encourage them with that. That is when I did before I had my private practice, I used to work with After School Matters. And that was a place at time to talk about poetry with the young kids. And they're doing it. They didn't recognize rap as poetry in there. And I'm like, oh yes, it is. So it is. And I asked them what they wanted to do, and there, everybody wanted to be on stage perform. I said, but before they perform and all that, they have to have something to perform. You have to, as far as writing it down. So whether it's the stories of the rap and everything, and though some of it can be a little harsh, it was coming from their environment. I appreciate just the authenticity of it all, and they was awesome. Just amazed as far as with that, just encouraging them. And then when you would let them do their thing, they would get this light would turn on in their eyes. And we did a performance at the end of the at the end of the year, and we did a collection of their poems. And just to see, I said, that's your first, okay? Don't say that's your first publication there. So if anybody asks you, have you been published, you can say yes as far as with that. I just really enjoy this. I would just encourage you, just tap into what they want to do. If it's the rap, let's take it a little step further. Maybe I'm sure some books out there by a little kid that likes to rap. Where are we going with that? Let's go with it, and just really, hopefully that'll be a stepping stone as far as with them. Maybe go back into some, like you said, the 60s. My favorite era is the Harlem Renaissance of the 60s. That's when I think you just saw the magnitude of different as far as poetic explosion and everything, and use that. But a lot of these kids, they are phenomenal. I have to get more in tune with them, but the ones that I've just seen are just wow. If they are creating this at this age,
yes,
10 years from now, they just gonna be off the chart. And I just encourage that. Continue. If it's not for you, if not for the world, but at least for yourself, and then you can always come back and decide what you want to do with it. You want to make it public for the world, or you just want to keep it for yourself.
There you go. There you go. So yeah, it was all about us encouraging your children because they're carrying on our legacy.
Oh, absolutely. And I think it's definitely about far as like you said, definitely got to be far as mirroring as far as with that. My daughter went to a period that she did not want to read. And I'm like, where is that coming from? Because you see me read all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And just like, but again, just balancing it out, because I know they have much more other activities as far as with these gamings and everything. But write the stories for the game. It's all storytelling and different, like you said, as far as different avenues and everything.
Yeah, it's true.
Okay.
Now, when it came to your series about rain, what was your process in finding an illustrator that matched your vision?
The first two books illustrator came from Daryl Harvey. Okay, like I said, so we not only connected as far as with that, but we're very open as far as sharing resources.
Mm-hmm.
The last Irresponsible Rain was another illustrator from Illinois, but same process as far as recommendations there, as far as with that. So that's the one thing I like about again, just utilizing your community, because that's very hard. A children's book is nothing without the illustrator. Exactly. I can put the words on the paper, but it's really the picture that breathes life into that story, and recognizing that. So I'm the one, I'm like, hey, who did you use? If it's somebody books that I like, I would definitely try to reach out to them. I said, that's the beautiful about social media now, or just try to contact, be like, hey, I have put on Facebook, I need to illustrate, and people will send me recommendations that way too. So I am one that would definitely be open to suggestions as far as with that.
So when looking for an illustrator, so as an independent author, oftentimes we're very mindful what our resources are.
Well, absolutely.
So far as no paying for the services and stuff. So best way, so through Facebook and other resources, they can probably find an illustrator that can work with probably a new author or that sort of thing.
And another one has been a good starting point is Fiverr. I don't know if you ever heard as far as Fiverr, Fiverr. And it's a community of freelancers, of
Mhm.
editors to different things. So I have used them for different projects, not for the illustrating of my book, but they have been illustrators on there as far as with that. So
Okay.
just being open to that.
So, so that being said, now say what's in the future for you on the literary end?
The future will be, of course, some more installation of the Rain series.
Mhm.
But the one thing that I'm gonna take a different path is playwriting.
Ah,
Get into as far as playwriting. I have this idea. I need to just flush it out a little bit more, but I definitely want to get into far as into playwriting because I think that I've had a reading of an ideal a couple of years ago, and that was just phenomenal. So I definitely want to add that in terms of far as the things projects that I'm working on. But the next thing that would be completed would be a book of short stories and a novel.
hmm.
That's in the more intermediate pipeline.
Okay. And so we will be waiting patiently.
Yes, I appreciate that.
Most definitely.
Mhm.
Now, for our listeners and viewers here, where can they purchase your book?
They could go on my website. It's very easy, FeliciaMadlockBooks.com. And they'll find the children's books there. And I'll be adding the novels, The Sins of the Father, I'm repackaging and bringing that back out. So that's another one there because it's been over 25 years now. So I'm definitely bringing that one back out along with I'm working on completing the third novel. But that's FeliciaMadlockBooks.com. They can purchase the books.
Okay, you heard it here, folks. This is where you can purchase the books and stuff. And I know for those in the Chicago area, uh, what bookstores would feature your work?
Oh, that's a good question. Used to be a time I can tell you. There is one independent. Right now, my books are not in the bookstore because our bookstores have really been far and few between. But there is a bookstore in our what we call our Beverly area called Bookies that I might look into, as well as a bookstore on the west side. But I would like Borders and those bookstores that was very receptive to independent authors, and our flood a black store. No, let me stop. There is a few now that bursting into books. There are some black stores that has open that I need to make connection with to see if they'll be open to receiving my book with it. There's about two that's on my agenda that I need to reach out to not only to visit, but like you said, just to build that partnership.
Yeah, there's no good. What's one thing is we're supporting each other. So, for those of us in here in the Twin Cities area, we recommend Black Garnett's Books in St. Paul and Strive Publishing and Bookstore in Minneapolis.
Excellent.
So I was putting it out there.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Like when I was in the Twin Cities at Durrell's event, I always come back with the books and everything because I'm very big on support. That's how we have to help and support one another. We cannot do this alone.
That is so true. Okay, we just got about a minute or so. Any closing thoughts?
I just want to say thank you for bringing me onto your show. This has been a great experience. And I definitely would try to, like you said, encourage others to reach their goal of 2,000 there as far as subscribers.
Oh, well, definitely appreciate it. And I say it has been a pleasure talking and sharing and stuff and having some good conversation.
Absolutely. I enjoyed it. So thank you so much.
Okay. Once again, I thank our guest author, Felicia Madlock, who is the author of Irresponsible Rain or in the Rain series, as well as the novels about sins of the father. So definitely, check out the work. This is W.D. Foster Graham, your Book Chat Thursday host for the Conversation with Al McFarlane. So meanwhile, take care and I'll see you in the next go round.
All right. Bye bye.